The 7 elements of Tevat: Animo, Geo, Electro, Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, and Dendro. All intricate to the way in which the world functions, each representing an ideal, each with a ruling god over it and a nation dedicated to it, each with vision wielders. But since Genshin Impact's launch, one element has been noticeably absent from the roster of playable characters and, for the most part, from the world itself: Dendro. Dendro presents many mysteries. Like, what does it do? What happens when I have 2 Dendro units in my party? How does it interact with other elements aside from Pyro? Well, in this theory video, I'll examine what we know about the Dendro element and use that to extrapolate what could be possible on Dendro's release. So, let's start with the facts. What does Dendro do? Dendro, as an element, produces field effects, does tick damage, that is to say, damage over time, summons creatures, and makes damaging constructs. Beyond that, not much is known about Dendro or its elemental reactions. As of this video, the only elemental reaction in the game that involves Dendro is Burn, incorporating the element of Pyro. In fact, the only indication we get from what Dendro does in the world is from the Dendro Slimes and the Dendro Samratrulls, and, well, also the grass. Finally, and this is something we only see Dendro Slimes do, the ability to summon other creatures to aid in battle. The only other enemy to do this are the Fatui Sensen Mages, but they're capped at 3 Sensens, whereas the Dendro Slimes can summon up to 5 small Dendro Slimes. Who uses the Dendro element? The only character we've met that has a Dendro vision is Baizu, the head of Boo Boo Pharmacy, and so far we have not seen any of his vision powers. Only that he is a skilled physician, is extremely shrewd, and has a talking snake. The other unit we know has a Dendro vision is the Archon, Lesser Lord Kusanali. But, as we have not yet met her, there is no way to know what exactly she is capable of beyond an immense control over the Dendro element due to her nature as an Archon and as a holder of a Gnosis. Finally, there's Yao Yao, and, assuming she does have a Dendro vision, which as of this video is unconfirmed, gives us less to work with beyond the various commentary from characters about her. So, from what we know for certain then, what could Dendro do in the future? From what we know about Dendro, its associated nation, and the one character we've met that we know for certain has a Dendro vision, we can extrapolate a couple things. The first is that Dendro seems to be the element most associated with tick damage. Once again, that is to say, damage over time. We see this effect when facing off against Dendro Slimes, and when under the effects of burning. Second is that Dendro is associated with wisdom, knowledge, and other such mental pursuits.
The god of wisdom's enemy is wisdom itself, and the oasis of knowledge is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. In the city of scholars, there is a push for folly, yet the god of wisdom makes no argument against it.
Sumeru houses the most prestigious institute in all of Tevat, Sumeru Academia, and multiple NPCs, as well as Lisa herself, are presented as having gone there to study. Finally, Baizu, the only Dendro user we have met, is a physician. a man of medicine and renowned in Liyue for being one of, if not the best doctor in the nation. Based on what we know about Dendro as an element so far, it is my theory that Dendro will be an element that requires foresight, cunning, and a certain degree of knowledge to use effectively. Dendro will be an element that requires wisdom, as it were. It will be an element highly reliant on the other elements to maximize its potential, and furthermore, will be a heavy source of constant overtime damage as opposed to the big bursts of damage we see with many of the other elements. Dendro will be an element focused on area of effect fields, tick damage and healing, as well as another source of constructs. Specifically, Dendro constructs, which will deal damage when interacted with, and that may serve as a conduit for many of the effects that the Dendro element will produce with other elements. The Dendro element may also be able to summon many other creatures to aid as well. But as only the Dendro slime is capable of this, we won't elaborate on it, and instead focus on Dendro's more unique abilities. So, what could Dendro Reactions come out to be? Based on what we know, I think Dendro elemental reactions could turn out something like this. Dendro plus nothing equals Dendro. It might do nothing like many of the other elements, except elemental damage and apply the elemental state to a unit, but it might also apply a sort of Dendro tick damage effect. Dendro attacks will therefore be weak, but will make up for it with damage over time, and, combined with other elements, will produce effects that amplify this effect. Dendro plus Geo equals crystallize, nothing, or corrosion. One of three things will happen. Either we will get the standard Geo interaction of creating a shield. We will get the no interaction like Geo and Animo have with one another. Or we will get one of the more powerful forms of tick damage in the game, corrosion, or some variation of it. And it will work just like its enemy counterpart. It is most likely that we will just get a Dendro shield, though. Dendro plus Animo equals swirl, nothing, or overgrowth. Again, like with Geo, one of three things will happen. Either the usual swirl effect, nothing, like Animo has with Geo, or we'll get a new effect in the form of overgrowth. The basic idea being that Animo plus Dendro results in the scattering of seeds that cause plants to spring into life, causing a field effect that causes Dendro tick damage to enemies and does tick healing to all allies. Much like Geo, we will probably, most likely, just get a Dendro swirl effect. Dendro plus Pyro equals burn. We know what burn does. Nothing changes. Burn will, however, be the most powerful form of tick damage aside from corrosion that can be gained through elemental reactions. Dendro plus Hydro equals drain. The afflicted unit will take tick hydro damage over time, and the afflictor gains tick healing, equivalent to a portion of the tick damage dealt. Dendro plus Hydro will combine the two major properties of the elements, damage over time and healing over time. Dendro plus Electro equals Blightening. The afflicted unit takes a burst of electro damage. The effect then bounces to the nearest unit that has not been affected by chain Blightening yet. This will include allied units, reducing in damage with each jump, up to a maximum of 5 jumps. After the jump, the afflicted unit will take constant tick electro damage for a time as well. This one is sort of out there, I'll admit. I can't really think of anything that Dendro and Electro could do together organically, but Dendro is all about plants, and plants have roots that reach far out. Electro bounces around, creating connections. In a similar fashion, perhaps Dendro and Electro will link other enemies and, yes, sometimes allies together for a massive chain of damage, leaving behind tick damage as well. Dendro plus Cryo equals Hoarfrost. The afflicted unit takes tick cryo damage over time, and their attack speed and movement speed are reduced for the time as well. This one is straightforward. Cryo is restrictive. Vines are restricted. These two combined together restrict to a near unparalleled degree, succeeded only by the frozen condition of Hydro and Cryo. That's all for the elemental reactions. But what happens if we were to have two Dendro party members? I believe, much like with two Hydro members that amplify healing, two Dendro party members will amplify tick effects, and this will be called Withering Aura. Withering Aura will increase the rate at which tick damage and healing is dealt and received, and increase the amount of time tick damage and healing remains in effect by 20%. So now the question is, how do we figure out what tick damage does? How is its damage calculated? I believe that tick damage will be based on the applier's elemental mastery score. So, a higher score results in a larger amount of tick damage. Traditionally, tick damage is based on a unit's maximum HP, and that will be the same in this game. Tick damage is based on the afflicted unit's max HP, and bypasses shields. 0 elemental mastery would basically be 0.1% of the max HP with each tick. It may increase by 0.1% for every 10 to 20 elemental mastery. Tick would last for 10 seconds before undergoing a 5-second cooldown before a tick effect could be applied again. In conclusion, Dendro will be an element focused on field effects, applying tick damage and healing of various kinds, and being an overall control element. It may be able to summon forth Dendro constructs or creatures that aid in this endeavor, but characters focused on pure damage output will likely be few and far between. Dendro is a thinking person's element, and its association with wisdom will reflect that in its application. At least, that is what I'm led to believe through its representation in the game so far. Obviously, nothing in this video is conclusive, and we won't know what MiHoYo has in store for us until Dendro is officially released in-game. But I look forward to that day when we can finally start building teams and see what the 7th element of Tevat has to offer. Thanks for watching this theory video. I stream almost every day over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ROFLHog3. That's ROFLHog III. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and follow me over on Twitch. Once we finally get the Dendro element, I fully intend to become a Dendro Traveler main and be the foremost authority on Dendro. So I hope you'll join me for that journey. Until then, gang, stay awesome, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye!